Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we'll be starting our social media workshop in a few moments. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا أما بعد. Respected listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you today to our social media workshop. Inshallah, we'll be covering over 2 days, today and tomorrow. I begin with praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending peace and salutations upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I'd like to begin by thanking Ilm Seekers Academy for giving this opportunity to present this workshop. And I would also like to thank people for attending this workshop as well. And I hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to learn something new today and something which is beneficial. And before moving on to the workshop, just a few housekeeping things. Obviously, we're delivering this workshop through Zoom, and because of the nature of the workshop, the content of the workshop, it would be advisable to try and view the content on a bigger screen rather than on a phone. So if you have a laptop or a TV screen, for example, it would be easier to look at the content and to go through the content as well. If during the workshop, if you have any questions, please note them down and you can put them in the chat later on. Inshallah, after the workshop's finished, today's session and tomorrow's session, we'll leave a couple of minutes, 5-10 minutes at the end, inshallah, for some question and answers. And try and stay focused on the content of the workshop. Inshallah, we'll be going at a steady speed. We won't be going too fast or too slow. And please ensure that you just follow, and inshallah the workshop will be uploaded on YouTube later on if you want to catch up later on. Now, for those who don't know me, my name is Anwar, and inshallah we'll go through the workshop schedule. So inshallah today we'll be going through 8 modules in this workshop over the course of today and tomorrow. We'll be going through social media as a tool, the impact of social media, coverage of social media, and we'll spend some time on the subject matter of addiction to social media, phones, etc., instant gratification, psychological impact of social media and how it affects us, how it affects crime in a positive manner and a negative manner. And we'll be covering a number of Islamic teachings whereby we can apply lessons from the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on how we can use social media and the things that we need to be aware of and be careful of. And at the end, tomorrow we'll go through a quick summary, and again, like I mentioned earlier, if there's any questions which people want to ask, we'll address them at the time. And obviously we'll give a little bit of time for a break if need be as well, inshallah. So just to give you a bit of a background about Islamic Academy of Commentary, who have developed this workshop, we specialize in teaching those children who have left madrasa and they're going on to either doing Alimiya classes. So we have Alimiya classes in the academy, which runs in Coventry. And we provide a number of services to the community. We have classes for teenagers. We hold many workshops throughout the country. So we develop the workshops in an interactive manner, like what we're using today. And we deliver these workshops either online, and we deliver these workshops on site on various venues. So we've covered workshops on male and female hygiene, funeral rites in Islam, journey of the Quran, how to perform Hajj, how to perform Umrah, And these workshops have been delivered, alhamdulillah, in many, many masajid throughout the country, in madrasas, in darulums, and even schools as well. And for the sisters, we run a Sanatain class during the daytime, and we produce many of our own publications as well. So far to date, we have released many, many booklets on the subjects where we deliver workshops. And to date, we've produced and distributed over 20,000 booklets distributed free all over the world. And we have many ulama, local ulama, muftis, alimas teaching at the academy who have graduated from many different madaris. So I myself, just to give you a personal introduction, my name is Anwar Shaikh. I have been teaching at the academy since its inception in 2008, and I've covered many books, teach alim class and teenagers, and over the last couple of years, we've been delivering a number of workshops. This particular workshop on social media, I've written a booklet on it, which is available either in print format and digital format, which I'll share the link tomorrow, inshallah, after the workshop finishes. So moving on to the first module, social media as a tool. Now, this dunya which we live in is what we call Darul Asbab, a place of means, where we have resources and tools, many resources and tools at our disposal. We use these to go about our own lives, to enrich our lives, for our survival, for our recreation. And some of these tools can be dual purpose. They can be used for good and for evil. So if we take a knife, for example, it can be used for good and bad. We use it daily for food preparation. It's an essential tool. But at the same time, that same tool can be used to harm other people, even in case of it can cause a loss of life when used with the incorrect intention. And just because harm it can be caused with a tool, it doesn't necessarily mean that we get rid of those tools, but rather what do? We put safeguards into place. So, for example, we have knives in our houses, in the kitchen, but we make sure that we put safety measures in place. We keep them out of reach of children, for example. Our deen, the hadith teaches us how to handle a knife, how to handle sharp objects, etc. So similarly, social media is also a dual purpose tool. It's like a double-edged sword. And at a basic level, social media is essentially a communications platform. But however, because there is so much potential to cause harm, because of the ease by which a person can fall into sin using social media, it is absolutely necessary to have some safety measures. When there is risk of harm, then measures are put into place to mitigate those risks so the harm is reduced. Alhamdulillah, our deen is so complete, so pure, that many teachings of the Prophet ﷺ can be applied to how to use social media, which inshallah we will go through the course of this workshop. And just like any other tool and resources that we use, social media also has its negatives and its positives. So in terms of impact, what impact does social media have onto our lives? Social media, as I mentioned earlier, is essentially a form of communication. And throughout centuries, various methods of communications have been around. So, for example, letters, telegrams, phone calls, emails, texts, etc. However, in the last 10 to 15 years, the way we interact with one another has evolved greatly and rapidly. And this has had a massive impact on society as well. And so much so that the full impact is still not yet known because social media, internet, technology, etc., is moving at such a fast pace that we are continuously trying to move with the times. So we don't really know its full impact and how far it goes. Now, this rapid change has resulted in an entity, i.e., social media. And social media is largely ungoverned and unregulated. And regulating social media is complex, is challenging, The UK itself has considered regulation of social media for quite some time now, so much so that in 2018 a paper was published on online harms and a number of proposals were put forward. And for those of you who are up to date with the news, etc., the online safety bill, which has featured in the news in the last couple of months quite a lot, the bill was passed on the 26th of October 2023, and the Online Safety Act 2023 is also now available to read online. And part of that bill, if we is quite detailed, but if we look at the bill, part of it is to make things safer for children online through various measures. Now, we have this on one side, this ungoverned entity, that it's free for all. People have freedom to do and say whatever they want. And at the same time, our reliance on it has grown a lot as well. So, for example, if we take COVID a couple of years ago, we relied on online communication for our work purposes, for our schools, Teams meetings, classes over Zoom became the norm. Many madrasas, many maktabs, they run over Google Classrooms because their classrooms physically had to be shut. So the only way they could operate was to teach online. Many madrasas, maktabs, they all went through online. And even though most classes have gone back on site, some still operate online. Ilm seekers who are hosting this event, they are online only, and there's benefit to that as well. And this has caused a shift. There's a behavioral change because of this. That, you know, our reliance on social media, our reliance on the internet, the way we do things, the way we look at things, that has changed. 10, 15 years ago, there were people who would never shop online. But since COVID, because they had that reliance on doing all their shopping online, grocery, etc., even some of the older people who never used a smartphone before, they eventually had to get a smartphone during COVID because that was the only way they could get their shopping because they were shielding, for example. And then they've seen the benefits and they've continued with that. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. There are some benefits to it as well. And similarly, the working environment, our attitude to working has changed as well. Many companies previously, many sectors would never, the staff would never work from home or work online. They would always go on site. Whereas now, many companies, even though COVID's over, or we're pretty much away from it now, many companies they promote 50 to 60% agile working, hybrid working. This is becoming the norm in many sectors, and some sectors have continued to move fully home working. So there has been a behavioral change and the way we look at things. So for instance, when jobs are advertised and a candidate goes for a job, one of the questions a candidate will normally ask, what's the home working policy? Is this facility available? Do I have to come on site every single day, or can I work from home 20, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, etc.? And this is the attitudes have changed of people because of what we've seen and our reliance on social media, internet, etc. So as you can see, whether we like it or not, social media has without a doubt had an impact on us as individuals and also had an impact on society as a whole on how we do things. Now, the next slide, I'm going to go through in this module a number of statistics, just to give us an idea of how widespread social media is, because we all use it all the time, but we don't really know how far widespread it is. So this will give you a bit of a flavor, inshallah, on how far wide-reaching social media is, and part of the reason why it's so influential and why it has made such an impact as it has. So the world population as of December 2023 was just over 8 billion people. 8 billion people as of December 23 on this earth. And how many of these people would, according to these are verified statistics that one can find online, and I've published many of these in the book as well. So of these, how many are smartphone users? 7.3 billion people. That's over 90% of the world population, they own at least a smartphone. And we're not talking normal mobile phones, we're talking a smartphone here. And how many of these smartphone users actually use social media? So this could be any platform, any form of social media. So social media is quite a wide category, as we'll come to a bit later on. So again, as of December, the estimated active social media users are 4.9 billion people. That is, almost 60% of the population that use social media in some form or another on a regular basis. Now, going further into this, how much, if we look at a Muslim population, just to give us a bit of an understanding, that again, as of December 2023, there's just under 2 billion Muslims, in on the earth. Now, how much time do we spend online? Because this is a really, really important statistic, because this links into the discussion of addiction, which we'll come to later on. And again, that's a very, very important aspect of that, inshallah, I want to touch upon today. So online per day, we spend approximately, and this is just an average number. There will be many people who spend more than this, 6.5 hours a day. 6.5 hours of our 24-hour period we spend on our mobile phones. Now, if we put this into perspective, that is a lot of time. Many of us, we go to work. If a person works full time, he'll be working maybe 7 hours, 7.5 hours, 8 hours a day. A person sleeps maybe 7, 8 hours a day. And then that rest of the time, where is that? Where is all that time being spent? It's a lot of time. If we work out how much time we spend performing our namaz every single day, for example, 5 Fajr, Zohar, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, each one of them 10, 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. But even then, we spend most of our time online. We spend a lot of time online. So this is something that we should look on. And, our phones, many of the phones, they, Apple, Samsung, etc., they will have apps on there which which will show you and tell you how much time you are spending on your mobile phone. It will tell you how many times you've unlocked the screen, how many times you've logged onto it, how many times you've been into a particular app, how much time you have spent on a particular app. And we should go into these because, it will be an eye opener for us. We say to ourselves, we have no time, we have no barakat in time, yet we spend a massive amount of time on our phones and online. And then one is spending time online. On social media, again, how much time do you spend on social media? On average, 2.5 hours. And this is an average. If we look at how much time do you spend on WhatsApp every single day? How much time do you spend on YouTube? How much time do you spend on Instagram, etc.? Some of us may be quite shocked on the hours that are spent, just on a couple of apps, and because we just continue to scroll through those apps. So as you can see, social media is very, very widespread. We spend a lot of amount of time. We spend a lot of amount of time on there. So what are the most popular, well-known and the most used social networks at the moment? And this is based on active users, not people who have just registered and they don't use it at all. Active users, people who are using it all of the time. So we have an app called WeChat, which is mainly used in China. Again, 1.3 billion active users. Instagram, which is very, very popular now, extremely popular, 2 billion. WhatsApp, again, very popular communication platform, again, 2 billion active users. YouTube, 2.5 billion active users. And then right at the top, we have Facebook, which is 3 billion active users. So these are really, really big numbers. And then there's a couple of other platforms which that many of us will be familiar with and will be registered on as well. We have TikTok, extremely, and I'm going to talk about TikTok in a little while. So we have TikTok at 1.2 billion active users, Snapchat at 750 million active users, and we have X, which was formerly Twitter, at 660 million users, active users. So as you can see, these are really, really big numbers of people using social media. I want to touch upon a little bit about TikTok. Um, and the reason I want to speak a little bit about TikTok is that from the all the different social media platforms, we have Facebook. Facebook's been around for quite a while. Twitter's been around for a while. Snapchat, Instagram, etc. But if we look at TikTok, which came on the scene around 2017, what we can see is the rapid rise of TikTok. Like, how fast it has risen above, Insta, Snapchat, etc. And this is quite, you can see that massive upward trend that in 2017 is right at the bottom, and then in 2020 it's overtaken, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, WeChat, and it's, just below Facebook now. And there's a reason behind that. There's a reason behind that why there has been such a massive increase in users from for TikTok. And this is because of the way this is the way because the way TikTok works. The way TikTok works is all videos, and they're all driven by an algorithm. Now, many apps like YouTube, etc., they have algorithms, they have what they call recommendation engines. So, for example, when you're on YouTube and you're watching a video, and then on the side, especially if you're on the in a web browser, you'll see on the right hand side, recommended videos. Um, and this is driven by what they call a recommendation engine, which essentially is an algorithm. So TikTok also has an algorithm um, in order to promote videos. And how did this algorithm work? People have tried to work out, because it's a heavily guarded secret. How the algorithm works, but people have gone in and done tests and research, etc. And the way, just in a nutshell, how the algorithm works is, for example, a person who first time he registers on TikTok, he will go onto TikTok as a new user, and what TikTok will do, it will it will show that user a number of random videos. And what will happen, it'll show you videos, maybe a prank video, a music video, a cookery video, this video, that video, etc. And what the algorithm does, it analyzes your behavior, your interaction, the way you have interacted with that video. Do you continue to watch it? Do you spend a couple of seconds extra on watching that video, or you do just scroll on to the next one? Do you share it with anybody? Do you heart it? Do you like it, etc.? And what happens is as you continue to look through these videos and interact with them, depending on your interaction, it will continue to give you, the algorithm will then start to build up a profile of you. This is what happens. Now, there was a company um, that tried this out. So what they did is they created 100 bots, 100 people, virtual people, for example, and they gave these 100 people a personality. This person likes cooking, this person likes prank, this person likes music, this person likes dance, etc. This person likes, his favorite color is blue. This person, this bot, his favorite color is green. This is male, this is female. So they created 100 bots, and what they did is those bots, they registered them on TikTok, and they got these bots to watch these videos to see how long does it take for TikTok to build up a profile of that bot based on what they have, how they have created that bot. And what they realized, what they learned from that study, was between 40 minutes and 2 hours. Between 40 minutes and 2 hours, TikTok had worked out a profile of that person's interests. So it knows, based on your interaction, based on your engagement, based on your interest, based on what you're looking at, how much time you have spent on certain videos, that it within 40 minutes to 2 hours, it knows your behavior. It knows what you like. It knows what you don't like. It knows what interests you. And this is this scary thought that, in such a short period of time, just within 40 minutes to 2 hours, it already knows. And then what happens is, because it knows what you like, that's why it will continue to promote videos that you like then. And that's how it works. And where you have, the FYP, the For Your page, that's essentially an algorithm. So if I have TikTok and another person has TikTok, our For Your page will never be the same. Is always going to be different because it's customized to yourself. And how is it customized? Because it learns your profile. It knows what you like and your interests. So this is something to be mindful of. And this is, again, what fuels the addiction, which we're going to cover in the next module, inshallah. So on to the next module, and this module is probably, I would say, is probably one of the most important modules, of this workshop, because we don't realize how addicted we actually are, and many people are addicted to their phones and social media without actually realizing it, and that's a very, very scary thing. So, with such wide coverage, addiction has become a major problem. You know, we have 5G internet now, 5G internet, really, really fast internet. And there's already talk now of upgrading that to 6G internet. There's already talks on that. Before we had 4G, 5G, and phones. We have huge data allowances now. Huge data allowances. 1 gig is nothing now. You have 10 gigs, 15 gigs, 100 gigs. Our internet at home is unlimited. 15 years ago, if you had broadband at home, it would have a monthly usage limit, 20 gigs, for example. Now it's nothing because everything is done through the internet. We have free Wi-Fi wherever we go, shopping malls, airports, wherever we go, we see free Wi-Fi everywhere, cafes, shops, etc. And we do everything on our phones now. Literally, our phones run our lives. We're able to do all our shopping off the phone. We have Amazon Prime next day deliveries, eBay. If you want something, you just go on it, you swipe it, and literally it's there the next day, or sometimes even the same day. In America, for example, in certain states, they have 1 hour drone deliveries, for Amazon, for example. We have WhatsApp groups, which, there's many, many benefits to that, to having WhatsApp group. Many madrasas, they will have WhatsApp group with parents. They have work places. They have a WhatsApp group for certain groups of people, etc. So there are many, many benefits, but it just shows how much we rely on our phones. And during the pandemic, there were many, many people, many sisters who were baking and cooking at home, etc., and they were selling food. And how was all of this done? It was all done through social media. You'd have Instagram pages, you'd have uh, Telegram messages, you'd have WhatsApp messages, etc. And in fact, it became so widespread that the Food Standards Agency, they actually raised concerns around food hygiene. In February 2021. And the president of the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health actually said that little food businesses are popping up like mushrooms in lockdown, because people are at home, they've got nothing to do, so people were baking, people were cooking, etc. And we all know that there was a shortage of ingredients, etc. And how were people communicating with other people to get their products out there? It was all through social media, all through WhatsApp. There's so many WhatsApp food groups that were set up, etc. And we spend a lot of time to organize our lives, our calendars, our appointments. Everything is done through our phones. And a lot of the reason why we do this is for increased productivity. But the flip side of that is, that although we say it's for increased productivity, that's the end goal, but this has enabled us and led us to become almost glued to our screens. And the other flip side of that now is is that, we don't just use our phones and social media to run our own life. We use it to see how others are running theirs. And that's the reality of it. Instead of just running our own life and doing our own things, we're saying, okay, what he's up to, what she's up to, what that person's doing, etc., etc. And then we have virtual reality and the metaverse, which is again up on the rise. Companies have invested billions of pounds and dollars in the metaverse. Facebook itself, they renamed their company to Meta just to show how invested they are in it, and that in itself is bringing its own problems. Um, there was an article the other day in the news about uh, I think it was a teenager or a young lady. She was in a young girl. She was in the metaverse, either playing a game or something like that, and she was abused. Um, Intimately abused by a group of people, and she was traumatized, although physically nothing ever happened. Um, but they were saying that the trauma that she felt, because it felt so real, because she's in virtual reality, that she was experiencing the same traumatic, post-traumatic stress that, if somebody had done that to that person physically, it was the same type. And now they're going to courts, etc., saying we should have some laws around this, and the police got involved, etc., because it's one of its first kind of case, and this is going to rise. All these types of crimes, etc., is going to rise. So the metaverse, virtual reality, this is also on the increase. And then the next big thing, which many of us will be aware of, is artificial intelligence. ChatGPT took the world by storm when it first came out. It literally changed the landscape of things. And there is actually AI built in many things already. We may not realize it, but many of our phones, many apps. We phone a call center, for example. AI is so clever and so advanced now that you wouldn't know if that person on the other end of the phone is a human being or a chatbot, because it's become so intelligent. You could have a full conversation, ask that person questions, and they will answer back to you as if they are a human being, but it's actually AI, artificial intelligence, because it learns as it continues to develop. And just recently, a few weeks ago, Samsung, for example, they announced their latest phone, the Galaxy S24 Ultra. And one of the highlights, one of the features that they mentioned in there is AI, built-in AI. And one of the features that they were speaking about is that a person can have a conversation with another person on the phone who doesn't understand their language. So I could be talking Arabic, for example, and the other person on the other end of the line doesn't understand Arabic. What will happen is I will talk in one language, and in real time, the AI will translate it into the other person's language and speak it back to him in my voice, and then vice versa. So two people will be having a conversation in different languages, but the AI in between will be translating in real time. So, this is just to give us a bit of an understanding that AI is here, and it is going to change a lot of things. They're still trying to work out how far it is going to impact. Is it going to impact jobs? How far is it going to impact people, etc., etc. Many schools, etc. Especially with things like ChatGPT. Our kids are using it to do their homework, for example. And it's good as a resource. If a person wants to do a bit of research, person wants to do a bit of troubleshooting, then yes, a person can use it, but there are other implications to this as well. And then, we have this other issue of constant scrolling, you know, and for those people who may remember when Google first came out, the Google first engine, the Google search engine, 15, 20 years ago, when you would type in something in Google, you're looking for something and you'd get your results. What would happen is have a page of results, and then you'd go to the bottom of the page and you would say number two, page two, and then page three, page four, page five, etc. Nowadays, you don't have that. You just scroll down and then automatically the results will load. You scroll down, automatically the results will continue. Now, in 2006, there was an American interface analyst whose name was Azza Raskin. Now, this person, he was an interface analyst, so basically he designs front end, the user interactive side of systems. And what he came across is what he invented was what we would call infinite scrolling. Um, and he just came across this and he built it in just so that to make life easier for people. So rather than having to keep pressing next, 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 as you go down to the bottom of the page, it automatically just brings in the next set of results. But then what happened was, as soon as this went out, it was embedded into many, many websites. Eventually, it made its way into apps. So apps now have this feature built into them. And what happened is he regretted actually what he created because what that fueled then was addiction. Because, for example, if you go on your Instagram page, there is no end in sight. You never get to the bottom. It's bottomless. You can keep scrolling for half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and you'd continue to see content, and the app will continue to generate content, but you'll never see an end in sight. And this is what is called addiction. Because then a person how many times does a person think, oh, I'll just go on there for 5 minutes. Especially the worst time is, before you go to bed. I'll just, check Twitter or I'll just check Facebook or let me just see what's happening on Insta or TikTok, and you just look at a couple of videos, and you scroll through, and before you know it, 1 hour has gone, 2 hour has gone, 3 hours have gone, and that time is gone now. You're never going to get that time back. So this is what fuels addiction, this part of this infinite scrolling. And, many people, many academics, they have compared addiction to social media and mobile phones to, they've compared it to gambling addiction. There's a professor by the name of Daniel Kruger of the University of Michigan. He says that social media companies are using the same techniques as gambling firms to create psychological dependencies. Because that's what happens when a person gambles. What happens, he'll say, I only a pound. I'll only do it a pound, it's nothing. And then he will gamble and he'll lose. And then he'll say, I'll do it again, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then that continues. And then what happens, his brain, it psychologically starts depending on that. So the same types of things which is used that gambling companies use in order to keep people hooked in. That's the same types of things that social media companies use. Because what happens is, that we have this constant urge of always looking at our phones. How many times do we check our phone even though we don't have a notification? How many times do we open Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, just to stay up to date so that we don't get left behind? There's this constant urge to continue to go back to our phones, and we will unlock and we can go in our phones and check these stats, and we should check them. How many times did you unlock your phone in a day? You'd be surprised. It'd probably be way over 100 times. And nowadays, it's even easier to unlock your phone. You just use your fingerprint, or some of them where they just scan your eyes, and it unlocks the phone for you. So it's so easy for us, and we're constantly going back to it. This is just the same as what they call gambling addiction. And there's an app called the Freedom app. And the person who created this app, he created this app because he was spending too much time on Facebook. He was spending a lot of time on Facebook. He became addicted to it. So he created this app to help people with addiction. And he says that Meta, the owner of Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, they employ hundreds of PhDs and behavioral scientists to make the app more stimulating. The apps that we have, they are designed in a way, the colors, the way, the placement of buttons, for example, the like button is just there. TikTok, one of the reasons why TikTok is so popular is because of the share button and the heart button. It's just there. It's really close. You don't have to like go right to the top of the screen or anything like that. And this, keeps us hooked into it. Um, and social media is now integrated into online gaming as well. Social media is integrated into online gaming, with the functionality to share videos, share little clips of, what you've done, talk to people, partner with other people, play with other people, etc. So this is now integrated into that as well. And the World Health Organization, they recently included gaming disorder. They included gaming disorder in their draft of the 11th International Classification of Diseases. So this ICD is almost a catalog of codes, which is used in all healthcare settings, in the UK, in America, in many other countries. And this captures the diagnosis of patients, and it enables them, to compare numbers and trends, and to see if things are rising up, etc. And this catalog, it continues to be updated when they come across new things. And there's now a new section, just on mental health disorders, behavioral disorders, etc. And gaming disorder is another big thing which is on the rise. And games are designed so it keeps a person engrossed. That's how they are designed, to keep you hooked into it. The graphics, the internet connectivity, online gaming, all of this has fueled that addiction. And this is why, we see, if you tell a child, that you play for an hour, half an hour, on a games console, they'll play for 1 hour. For example, they play for 2 hours, and you'll tell them, okay, you've been on there for 2 hours. Can you get off now? And they say, well, it's 2 hours already gone. No, I've only been on it for 5 minutes. They're so immersed into it. They lose. They don't know what's happening outside. Because they're so immersed into the game. And one of the very popular game was Fortnite. Extremely popular, and again, as you can see from the chart, massive growth in a very, very short amount of time. 1 million users in August 2017 to 350 million in March 2020, which is when the pandemic, and that's gone even higher now. Estimated figures for 2023 are, they're saying, around the 400 million mark, probably more than that. And our children are spending so much time, on games like Fortnite and other games, because, and this is all fueled by internet connectivity, social media, etc. And this has had other adverse effects as well, because of the amount of time children are spending time on their consoles. Schools have complained because children are staying up late at night, just to play games with their friends. Sometimes those friends may be on the other sides of the world. So, for America, they're like so many hours ahead, different time zone, etc. It may be daytime for them, but it's 1 o'clock in the morning in this country. There's been rehab clinics, for children, rehab clinics in the US. There have been cases of parents having to send their children to rehab clinics because they have become so hooked on Fortnite and other online activities. Children are having to take their children to rehab clinics. This is how bad it is. It's affecting concentration in the class. By the time it's, after lunchtime, afternoon time, kids, they can't concentrate because they've been up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, playing on games consoles, social media, etc., etc. That is affecting their concentration in the schools. They can't do their homework properly. They can't, absorb everything which the teacher is teaching them in the classroom. And then we have cyberbullying, which is a massive issue now. Massive issue, cyberbullying. Um, in particular with regards to Fortnite, there's been cases where children are bullied because of their Fortnite characters. Because of their Fortnite characters, they're being bullied. They're exposed to aggressive behavior. Children at a young age exposed to the aggressive behavior, which they see in gaming, etc. And on top of that, they becoming more aggressive themselves. Children nowadays, as parents, children, they become angry very, very quickly, very quickly. Have very short tempers, they have very less patience. And, this is across the board. We see this everywhere. And part of it is the way, the all that exposure on gaming, social media, etc. that they have. And, the foul language, that they hear inevitably, because all sorts of people are on these gaming platforms, etc. And these games, um, gaming companies, they actually employ psychologists. They actually employ psychologists when they are designing their games. Why? So that they can make them addictive. How do they keep people hooked into a game? They use rewards, they use points, so that they are kept in the game. They say the average, attention span of a person now is about 7 seconds. The average attention span of a person is around 7 seconds. And this is why in a game, every 7 seconds or so, they'll be getting some points, they'll be getting a star, they'll be getting, some life, be getting an upgrade for some weapon, etc. And many games now, they have a whole storyline. They have a whole storyline. So you have, for example, Call of Duty. You'll have part one, part two, part three, part four, etc. And it's not just each game is in isolation, how it used to be before. 10, 15 years ago, when they used to have games, they would have a game, and this would be, number one, and then they'd come up with another one, number two. But number two would have nothing to do with number one. Now what happens is after you finish the first part, they leave you on a cliffhanger at the end. They leave you on a cliffhanger on purpose because they want you to continue the story so that they know that as soon as the part two comes out and it hits in the shops, you're going to go and get it straight away. They know that. And many games they run on like this: part one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. And each time they do that, they're enhancing the storyline, they're enhancing the playability, etc., etc. And even things just like graphics, they're making it so real. They're making it so real in games, which increases the immersiveness. So, for example, I'll give you an example. There's an article in the BBC in December 2023, and the title of the article, you can go and search this. It was why weather in games is getting more realistic. Why weather in games is getting more realistic. Now, there's a game for those of you who play games. There's a car game by the name of Forza Motorsport, very, very popular, and they made a big deal. They made a very big deal when they were advertising the latest game of the complex weather system in the game. you know that when you're driving the car, just like when you're driving a real car outside and it's raining, you have wet roads, the grip of the car is going to be much less. There's going to be more chance you're going to skid. You have less control over the car. They've built it into the game, and they made a big deal about it. Players can race in conditions, when it's sunny, when there's fog, heavy rain. All of these things affect the cars, affect our driving in real life. They're bringing that into the gaming world now as well. There was a rumor about a dynamic weather system in Grand Theft Auto 6. All of these things combined, it fuels our addiction. All of this combined, it fuels our addiction. So the question is then, why do we become so addicted? Why do we, what is it that makes us become addicted to games? What is it that makes us become addicted to our phones, to social media, etc.? And to better understand this, we need to understand our brain. That's what we need to do. We need to understand our brain and how it works. So in our brains, there's a chemical which is released called dopamine. And this chemical which is released is known as the feel-good hormone. And this chemical is released when we feel some sort of happiness, some sort of pleasure. It's the body's is the brain's part of the reward system. So, for instance, when you have something to eat, when you do something that you enjoy, what happens? Your brain releases a shot of dopamine, and that makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy. It makes you feel a sense of achievement. And this is the reason why junk food and sugar are so addictive. Because, when you're eating chocolate, when you're having dessert, what happens? It makes you feel good. You get a dopamine, our brain releases that dopamine. It makes us happy. So even though, we're full, we're not hungry, but you put dessert in front of you, a nice dessert, chocolate, sweets, etc., we'll still want to have it because it's going to give us a dopamine rush. And this is why they say chocolate makes you happy, because that's essentially what it does. It gives you temporary pleasure, even though later on, you have a whole bar, 2 bars. Later on, you may feel all bloated, and you may feel a little bit down. You might regret it, but at the time, you felt really good because it's that dopamine, that's been released in your brain. Now, it's important to have the right amount of dopamine as well. It's very important. Um, to have a correct balance of dopamine will ensure that a person remains happy, a person remains focused. If a person has low dopamine, then this leads to lethargy, tiredness, a sense of being unmotivated. A person just doesn't feel like doing anything. He just can't be bothered. And there are other side effects as well. And so much so, there are health conditions that are linked to either high or low levels of dopamine. So, for example, Parkinson's, which is a chronic condition, you know, if a person has very low levels of dopamine all of the time, this is common in Parkinson's patients. ADHD, addiction as well. Too much dopamine all of the time, too many shots. That leads to addiction, and it leads to other disorders. So it's very important to have that correct balance. So when it comes to social media and phones, imagine, a person picks up his phone, he is going to, for example, post a video on TikTok or Instagram, and he posts it. What happens? He posts a picture, he gets a notification, he's had this many views, someone's hearted it, someone's commented on it, oh, this looks really cool, etc., etc. He can see how many shares it has, and what happens is the dopamine increases. He gets a shot of dopamine. And what happens is that person then feels happy, he feels good, that, oh, someone's liked my video, someone shared my video, someone's commented on my video, he likes that attention. This is the nature of a person, he likes that attention. But then what happens, that attention is short-lived, that happiness is short-lived. People might stop communicating with that person, you know no one's looking at it anymore, and when a person puts his phone down, that dopamine shot that he's had is gone down now, and he senses, a feel of deflation, of going down a bit. And then this next step, that's when the craving then comes in. This is when the craving comes in, because he got some dopamine when he, posts that picture, when someone, interacted with his post, and he felt really happy. And then what happens is he keeps checking his phone after that. That is that critical step. After his dopamine has gone down, to go back, the urge to go back to that phone and to say, has anyone looked at my, have any more people, have I had any more views on my video that I put out? And then he continues to look at his phone, and this is where the addiction increases in a person, because then this cycle then just continues all of the time. He just wants to constantly go back to his phone. And this concept of continuously getting dopamine shots, which is similar to when a person takes drugs and he becomes high on that drugs. He becomes high for that little moment. He feels he's on top of the world. for that short period of time. He feels in top of it, he forgets everything, and he feels like, he's it now. There's no one better than, no one like him. But then that goes down, and he goes down further than before. And then what happens? He needs another shot. But what happens is, when it comes to this dopamine shots, you know, if a person, he took drugs, for example, I don't know how much people take, but if they took a little bit, then the second time he takes it, he's gonna have to take a little bit more, because the same amount's not gonna give him the same amount of dopamine now. It's not gonna give him the same level of happiness. So he's gonna have to take a little bit more each time. And this is the same thing with our phones. Sometimes we might go back, once, twice, but then what happens is we have to go back more and more and more, and then it becomes an obsession. We're constantly checking our phones. And this same concept of giving us constant dopamine shots, this is replicated in games. This is replicated in apps. So even the apps that we have, the colors that they use, for instance, just the colors that they use in the apps is there to keep us captivated. The colors are not chosen at random. The layout of the page is not there randomly, is there for a reason. Each little item is meticulously designed, and they have psychologists to assess the placement of everything, to see, okay, if we put it there, what effect is it going to have on the end user? If if they press this button, or if you use this color, what effect is it going to have on the end user? To this level, these are how our apps are designed, because they know if an app isn't designed very well, it's not going to get used, and they want people to use it. They want people to interact with it. And now in the UK, there's a specialist clinic to treat children and young adults with gaming addiction. There's a clinic in London. It's hosted by Central and North West London NHS Foundation Trust, and they run the National Centre for Gaming Disorders. They run the National Center for Gaming Disorder. They run other things as well in that place. But one of the thing is, people can take their children there. Young adults can go there if they can't get off their phones, if they can't get off their gaming, they're hooked to social media, etc. It's a very, very big problem, addiction. Now, just to give us a bit of a flavor, and this slide here, which I've put in, there was a professor by the name of James A. Roberts, and he studied this topic of addiction of phones, etc. And he's come up with 6 signs of phone addiction. 6 signs of phone addiction. And I'm gonna go through these signs. And it's more of, we use this as a self-reflective piece. We don't look at other people that are, he's always doing this, or he's always doing that, she's always like this. No, it's more of, you know, as a self-reflective thing, and we can look at ourselves in the mirror. So number one, the first sign of a phone addiction is that a person reaches for the phone first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning. How many of us reach for our phones? We read the dua first when we wake up, or do we reach for the mobile phone first to see, what have I missed last night? Some people, what they've actually, many of us, you know, we put our alarms, etc., on our phones, to wake us up in the morning. Some people, what they've started to use, what they've started to do, go back to the old alarm clock. They put the phone away, they turn the phone off, leave the phone downstairs, and they use the traditional alarm clock to get them up. Because, okay, you may have to turn your alarm off on the phone, but as soon as you scroll onto your phone and unlock it, straight away you're going to start, okay, I want notification. And if you've left your Wi-Fi on or your data on overnight, you'll see that I've had, 13 WhatsApp messages, someone's commented on my Instagram page, etc., etc. And that's it. Before you know it, you're in. And your 10-15 minutes first thing in the morning is just spent on the mobile phone. Secondly, using the phone when you're bored. This is very common. You go anywhere, you see a room full of people, and people, rather than making conversation with them, people are just bored, they're just on their phones. They just, because, and that's something for us to, if we're bored and we're not doing anything, because our fingers can't stay still, the first thing we do is just pull out our phones. That's what we do. And even though there's no notification or anything, We'll just scroll through this app, that app, just check, etc. The third sign, increased time is spent on mobile phones. How much time, again, like I mentioned earlier, how much time do we actually spend on our mobile phones? We should look in, there's a well-being setting in many phones, and it will tell you how much time we spend. We should go in and have a look, and for example, some phones like Samsung phones, they will tell you like each week, it'll send you a little highlight to say, this week you used your phone 1 hour less, or 35 minutes less, or 2 hours more, for example. It will tell you that, just so that to help us. And these companies, Apple and Samsung, they've had to build these in because people have complained, they're spending too much time on their mobile phone. So they're trying to, put in something to help us, deal with our addiction on phones as well. Becoming anxious when separated from our phone. Again, back to that reliance. We rely so much on our phone, for our day-to-day businesses. If we were to leave our phone in the house and go shopping, for example, or just go somewhere, um, and we've left, and then a few minutes later we realize, oh, I left my mobile phone. How would we feel? Would we think, oh, it doesn't matter, I can do without my phone for an hour or for 2, 3 hours, it's fine, you know? Or do we become anxious? Will we make sure we make our journey back home in order to get our phone and then go? It's something to think about. Complaints about phone usage of others, complaints about your phone usage, from other people, spouses. This is a very, very common problem. Husband is always on the phone, not giving an attention to the wife. Wife always on her phone, not giving enough attention to the husband. This is and there's been breakups over this. There's been breakups over this, because what happens is a person goes on a phone, either any of the spouses, and sometimes, it leads to other things. Not all the time, but it can, and it has. It leads to other things. And then, a person becomes secretive, etc., etc. So this is another issue. And difficult to reduce a person's phone usage. If somebody told us that, we must reduce our phone usage, how hard would it be for us? And a classic example is, for example, in the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is around the corner. Um, Time in Ramadan is at a premium. Time is at a premium in the blessed month of Ramadan. Every moment is blessed. Yet, if we were to be told that, okay, and we should make a target, you know, we should make a target in the month of Ramadan that, I'm only going to go on it for my essential stuff, my essential text messages for work purposes, emails, etc. But, just browsing and scrolling through TikTok and Instagram, etc. I'm going to leave all of that, you know. And this is almost like a type of fasting. In fasting, we stay away from food, we stay away from drink. We need to, have a fast where we stay away from our phones as well. And for the people who sit in i'tikaf, for example, in the month of Ramadan, sisters sit at home, the brothers they sit in the masjid. The worst thing that spoils a person's i'tikaf is mobile phone. That's the worst thing. The worst thing, because i'tikaf is there that a person disconnects himself from the dunya and he connects himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what does mobile phone do? It does the opposite. It disconnects us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and connects us to the dunya. We see everything that's going on in the dunya at our fingertips. And i'tikaf is supposed to be so that, we let go of the dunya. So if we have intention and if we sit for i'tikaf, whether it's for sisters at home or the brothers in the masjid, then the first most important point of i'tikaf is a person turns his mobile phone off. And if he needs it for emergencies, then that's fine. Keep the data off, keep the Wi-Fi off. Only, and in many masjids, for example, they have enforced this as well because they've seen the harm it causes. So, for example, Islamic Dawah Academy in Leicester, there many hundreds of people all over the UK and even from abroad, people come for i'tikaf there. But what do they do? One of the rules is, and they've had this rule there for many, many years now, is anyone who's coming for i'tikaf, they have to give their mobile phone in. Okay, they have a mechanism in place for emergencies. If someone from outside needs to contact them, or they need to contact somebody else, it's all documented. There are mechanisms in place, but they ensure that nobody has their mobile phone with them. Why? Because of the harm it causes. And these six signs are really an eye opener for us. We should assess ourselves, you know, you know, our children, our families, etc. Make them aware of these things because, before we know it, we might not know it, but we're probably addicted to our mobile phones more than what we know. We probably are, and that's something for ourselves to assess and something for ourselves to address and to reduce. And this slide, which I've put in, is a slide which I found on the internet, and it just gives us, a typical day in the life of a smartphone user. I'm not going to go through every single statistic in there, but just, a few key points which come out. For example, 51%, over 50% of the people, they check their phones within 15 minutes of waking up in the morning. 30% will spend time checking social media throughout their day, throughout their day. 39% will be browsing online while at work. Now, obviously, when a person's at work, he's at work. He should be working. He shouldn't just be wasting his time on, browsing internet, eBay, shopping, etc. He's there for work. Are paying him for his time. Yet if he's using that time for something else, this is incorrect. And more importantly, another important statistic is, 51% use their phone during family time. That's shocking. Family time is supposed to be for family, where a person interacts with his spouse, with his children, where they talk to one another, they spend time as a family. And unfortunately, the situation is that, we all have, mobile phones, and everyone is glued to their phones in order to stay connected to people. Yet the people that we're supposed to connect the most, i.e., our own family, we've become disconnected with them. We're all sitting in the same room. Sometimes, the parents might be downstairs, children will be upstairs, and just to try and interact with the children, they'll send them a message instead. This is something to think about. And in some households, what they've actually done, they have, for example, when they sit down for dinner, they will have a little basket or a little box. Everyone has to put their mobile phone inside, so that when they're at the table, at the dasarkhan, for example, the only people they interact and talk with is one another. And the mobile phone, it stays away from the table. And many non-Muslim families do this. Many non-Muslim families do this as well, because they've seen that the harm that it causes, because the person just sitting and eating and he's just on his mobile phone, not looking up from his phone and not looking at anybody else. And the worst part of addiction is if we don't know we're addicted, we won't take any steps to fix it. That's the worst part. And many of us probably are addicted. And, some of this will hopefully open our eyes and enable us to make some sort of change, some minor change. No one's saying you got to throw your phone away and that's it. Go off grid, for the rest of your life. You can still have a mobile phone. You can still have a smartphone. You can use social media, but it needs to be done in moderation. It needs to be done properly so that a person doesn't, get any harms from it. We've got a couple of more modules left. We'll cover what we can today, and then we'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. So the next slide is about instant gratification. Now, because everything is on our fingertips, because everything is at our fingertips, we have instant access to everything. The internet never goes off. Shops, they might close, on on Christmas Day, on New Year's Day, in the evenings. But online shopping, for example, Amazon, it doesn't have a closing time. eBay doesn't have a closing time. Other things on the internet, it's 24/7, 365 days a year. And, our phones, how often do we even shut them down? Many of us, we don't shut our phones down. They're on constantly. The Wi-Fi, the internet is connected all of the time. We don't turn it off. And because we've got this instant access all the time, what has this led to? A reduction in self-control. Because when we want something, we will pursue it straight away and expect it instantly. So, for instance, we feel hungry, and rather than cooking, what will you do? We'll just Uber it in because it's so easy. You just go on Uber, you see what's around you. It'll tell you, it'll take you, in 20 minutes, you can have your burger. In half an hour, you can have your doner kebab. And you just buy it, it pays for it, and you can see, on the map, when the delivery driver is on his way, he's 5 minutes away, 6 minutes, 3 minutes away, 2 minutes away. And this fuels our instant gratification. Like I mentioned before, Amazon next day deliveries. Before people, we're happy to wait a week for something, but now we want something straight away because we know, people at Amazon do it straight away. So we don't want to go to the shops to buy something. It's created us. It's okay when someone needs something urgently, for instance. But this doesn't always happen. That's only in exceptional cases. We've applied this to everything now. And because of this reduction in self-control for ourselves, children, they expect things instantly now as well. They want everything straight away. They're demanding the parents, oh, I want this toy right now. I want this right now. I want this game right now. It's out in the shop. I want it right now. And sometimes what happens is children, with online shopping, etc., they just go and buy it themselves. And, the parents don't know because their payment details, for example, may be saved into the computer or into the phone, and before you know it, they've got a £300 bill at the end of the month because they bought a couple of games online. They purchased this online off the store, gaming store, etc., etc. So children is change their behavior. They want everything instantly as well. And even worse than that is, parents, they're so busy in their work, in their chores, in their own lives, in their responsibility. Everything's so fast moving now. There's so many things, that we have to do that then technology, the mobile phone, the gaming console, it becomes the new babysitter, you know. It becomes the new babysitter, the kids get bored so quickly now. They don't want to play, a board game. They can't sit still for 10 minutes. You have to give them something to keep them entertained. So what happens? Even little children, little children, um, they will have a phone. They will have a phone, you have, for example, push chairs. You have push chairs now that have a mobile phone holder. Or you could buy a mobile phone holder that goes onto a push chair. A small, and I've seen it myself, where you've got, a child who's less than 1 years old, a baby, and they're in the pusher and the parents shopping, and because they can't be bothered, they don't want the child screaming the place down, they just put a cartoon on. They just put a cartoon on that mobile phone, and just so that, they can just continue to stay entertained. Many children, they can't eat their food. They can't eat their food without having something on the screen. And this is a reality. We think that it's just gonna we'll just keep them quiet for a little bit, then bring my head in, but it's creating a lot of harm. It creates a lot of harm. Um, there's examples now. There's cases now where, in nurseries, for example, that there's children that because they're using devices all of the time, they're finding it difficult to interact in real life with people now. They call this selective mutism. They have like certain apps, for example, they won't talk to anybody, but as soon as you play the app with a song or music or something, they'll happily sing with it. But as soon as you put them in front of somebody and tell them, okay, have a conversation with this person, they will find it extremely difficult. And this is something that we are seeing, social skills, self-confidence in children is going low. And part of it is because they are more happy to interact with people on the screen than interact with people in real life. They find it difficult to have a full-on conversation with their parents, with grandparents even, but they're happy to speak to someone they don't know on, on a social media platform, on WhatsApp, or etc., etc., and they'll happily talk to them, continue hours on end. They'll be happy. And this is an issue. This is something which is coming up. And the amount of children that have mobile phones now, when you talk about, mobile phones, smartphones, you know, 90% of children up to the age of 11 have their own mobile phone. 90%. And when we think, and we'll cover tomorrow with regards to the different social media, some of the key social media platforms and their age ratings. And if you remember this, that 90% of children up to the age of 11 have their mobile phone. There was a statistic, over 50% of children, they have screens in their own bedrooms. And again, we'll talk about this tomorrow under preventative measures. So something to think about, because once they have a mobile phone, once they have a smartphone, once it's connected to the internet, then the world's their oyster. You don't know what they're seeing, what they're doing, and parents need to educate themselves on this. And it's important, that children have time away from the screen as well. Children have time away from the screen. We'll go through one more module, and then we'll call it a day. If anyone does have any questions, please put them in the chat, and then we can answer them at the end. So the next slide is around psychological impact, because there is going to be, and there is a psychological impact when we use our mobile phones, when we use social media, and there's many factors to this, but it's important that we are aware, so the impact can be minimized. So the basic nature of social media is what it brings with it is constant exposure to the lives of other people. And what happens, this can affect a person's mental well-being, inevitably. Um, it, the amount of violence that a person is exposed to online, on social media, that psychologically impacts a person. We see others having fun all the time, people enjoying themselves on holidays, on meals out. If a person is going through a very tough time in his life, and they're seeing other people always having fun, they're going out, spending lots of money, um, and this can have effect on that person. And we need to understand, that what we see online of other people's lives is usually just the good side. We don't see everything. Most people will only publish and post the good stuff. The fun, the holidays, the food, the spending, the nice clothes, etc., etc. You know, um, they're not going to post about the bad things that are happening to them. There's also a lot of indecent content, unfortunately, a lot of indecent content online. And this is a very big issue, especially when children are included. One of the major things in the online safety bill is to protect children from harmful content, indecent content. And there's been a lot of cases in the news with regards to this. And then there's comparison, because we see lives of other people, inevitably a person starts comparing themselves to other people, and it does affect. And there's been some extreme cases. So, for instance, in 2019, in April, there was a 12-year-old girl in Warrington, in the UK, which is near Liverpool. She committed suicide, and the coroner reported, part of the report, in the report, the coroner mentioned that she was emotionally overwhelmed and influenced by her intense use of social media. So social media had a big part in her committing her suicide. More recently, which came in the news, about Molly Russell in 2017, 14-year-old girl in London. She took her own life. The findings which came out from the inquest last September. The findings they found that she took her own life while suffering from depression and had interacted with harmful social media content. These are just two cases which I've mentioned. There are many, many cases like this. Many, many cases where people have either been bullied, people have been harmed, people have taken their lives, and especially when it comes to youngsters, teenagers, girls, because of what they're being exposed to on Instagram, what they're seeing from other people, on messages which are sent around in WhatsApp groups, for example, in schools. People think it's just harmless fun. People think it's just harmless fun, but it isn't. It affects people. It affects real people. And there has been many, many cases where people, it's gone to the extreme and people have had to taken their life, unfortunately, because, for them, there was no other avenue. And because, like I mentioned earlier on in the workshop, that, social media is very hard to regulate, and, companies are doing things, Facebook, Instagram, etc. They are trying to remove harmful content where they can. They are trying to put measures into place so people, children can't send intimate photos, for instance. They are putting those things in place. But if you think about it, social media has been around for a good number of years now, and a lot of it, the harm's already done. These measures probably needed to be in there much, much earlier. But again, it's part of that, we don't know the effect of social media and how fast it has moved on. So we'll conclude here. There's no messages or no questions in the chat. So tomorrow we'll start again at 2 o'clock, inshallah. And the modules that we have left to cover is with regards to video games. So we've touched upon video games, but there's a few more bits that I want to speak about. And we'll talk about crime as well, because crime is another very, very important part when it comes to social media, good and bad. And then the last module is with regards, and the last module is a bit of a lengthy one, where we go through a number of hadith, Quranic verses, where we learn various Islamic teachings, and how we can, improve our way of using social media, stay away from its harms. And inshallah, at the end of the workshop tomorrow, I'll also I have one or two slides which speak about preventative measures, some practical advices, and this is geared at for children, for males, for women, adults as well, parents who have children in their houses, on what we can do and what we should do in order to mitigate some of these harms and ensure that we use social media productively, we use it in a way that we can benefit from, and that's beneficial to us and others. But at the same time, we stay away from any of the harms. So inshallah, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this first session. I pray that it's been beneficial to everybody. And inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow at 2 o'clock. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك